Okay, so now we are starting. See, these are the significant points we have to understand. The implication here seems to be that women are inferior beings who have been created only to gratify the sense of man when he can no longer soar on the wings of only a gravity, the sense of contemplation. In doing so, Milton is denying women's souls and projecting them as gentle domestic brute. It is an insult to be projected thus. The Wollstnecfrat had successfully exposed the unfairness behind Milton's image of women. The danger lies in the fact that work like Paradise Lost go a long way in forming prevalent opinion, and if such work advise women to render themselves soft and attractive, only they only strengthen the prejudice already existing in society. Lord Bacon's comment is incorporated next to illustrate that though man may be close to being a beast in his physical appearance, yet in spirit he has to aspire to be godlike, godlike. Otherwise, he is a base and ignorable creature. The same rule should apply to women too, and they should be allowed to aspire to be godlike in spirit. So now listen, Lord Bacon, the comment of Lord Bacon's is very significant. Lord Bacon's comment is incorporated next to illustrate that though man may be close to being a beast in his physical appearance, yet in spirit he has to aspire to be godlike, otherwise he is base and ignoble creature. The same rule should apply to women, and they should only be allowed to aspire to be godlike in spirit. Men, says Wollstonecraft, act in an unphilosophical manner when they try to deny a woman this opportunity and keep them in perpetual state of childhood, and here say try to ensure their good conduct. Wollstonecraft finds Rousseau to be more consistent when he talks of stopping the progress of reasons in both the sexes. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, 1712 to 1778. Advocate the supremacy of instinct and institution over reason and rationality. Wollstonecraft consistently referred to his work especially Emily when he has expressed his views on education of women. Wollstonecraft agrees with Rousseau when he talks of suppressing reason in both the sexes. Her argument is that if man eat of the fruit of knowledge, then women will come in for a taste, but having been kept in ignorant throughout their lives, the knowledge they acquire can only be of evil. So the most significant thing for women is to get education, and they should have their independent economic source. They should have their independent economic source, their own earning. Make a case of women's right to education. Having established that women do have souls and therefore to right they acquire human virtue and stability of character, Wollstonecraft now extend her argument to include the manner in which they can do so. She proposes that instead of merely existing on the periphery of knowledge, women should turn towards the fountain of the light. Society keeps women ignorant in the name of innocence. That's, please remember, society keeps women ignorant, uh, ignorant in the term of innocence. When people apply to children is acceptable, but then they apply to man and women, it becomes merely a polite term for weakness. Women should not be denied the right kind of education. It is only education which can expand their horizon and help them mature into reasonable, rational thinking human beings. In this context, she returned to comment on Milton's once again, who seems to be of a different opinion, and select two passages for the Paradise Lost to point out the inconsistencies of Milton's perception and depiction of women. In the first passage, Milton emphasized on the physical beauty of Eve and her unargued obedience to Adam, whom she considered her author and disposer. Just as God as Adam's law, so is Adam for Eve. It is enough, says Milton, for a woman who have this much knowledge, then is the worthy of the praise. Yeah, and mostly you will find generally in husband wife, you will find that women share, wife mostly share husband's opinion, or she align with the husband's opinion. That is not necessary. She can have her own opinion also, and it could differ from man. There is no need to align with your husband's opinion, but that generally happen because of her economic status, because of her independent status. uh, Economic, she's not economically independent, and that thus she doesn't have independent status. So that's how it's a mostly, and then you it is considered to be a good marriage, but that could not be. So it is. So that's how. And then the worthy of the praise. The implication in this passage from Paradise Lost is that women in this case Eve is denied the ability to reason and think of herself. A woman is being denied to reason and think herself. Yes, Wollstnecfrat points out that this is how we argue with children because become young, their perspective and discerning abilities are yet unformed. However, even to children, we point out that you have to depend on your judgment only till the time you yourself attain maturity. After that, you have to think of yourself and rely only on God. If we can say this to children, then why can't we say it to women? The moment women become adult, they could rely on their own judgment. So why throughout her life she would be depending on the judgment of the husband? Hmm? Why? After that, you have to think for yourself and rely on only God. So if we can say this to children, then why can't we say it to women? Why are we preconditioning to think that women will never be able to think of themselves and always have to depend on men? Generally, when you are driving, uh, mostly patriarchal people, chauvinist, they comment, अरे इसको गाड़ी चलाना नहीं आता है. See how many hours of duration she has driven. आपने गाड़ी उसने कितनी चलाई है, कितना एक्सपीरियंस उसको है, और कितना व्हीकल उसके हाथ में रखा, कितनी बार वो हाईवे पे गई है, कितनी बार वो इंटरस्टेट गई है, कितना 1000 किलोमीटर उसने ट्रैवल किया है, वो सब एक्सपीरियंस से आता है. तो जब आपने भी गाड़ी चलाई थी 200-300 किलोमीटर पे, आप कितने एक्सपर्ट थे? नहीं ना. तो फिर बोलने से पहले सोचा करिए ना कि कितना. Just because she's a woman you are making judgment. That's what male chauvinism and patriarchy. Okay, so yet in another passage from Paradise Lost, Wollstnecraft point out the inconsistency in Milton's attitude. In his passage, he makes Adam speak of equality between him and his mate. He questions God. Among unequals, what society can sort, what harmony or true delight. He talks against any disparity between the two sexes and says, in disparity, the one intends the other still remiss, cannot well suit with either, but soon prove tedious alike. True delight, he says, can come only from the consorting with equals. A fellowship I speak, such as I seek, fit to participate. All rational delight, this fellow can only be attained if women are given equal opportunities. Having cleverly unearthed the nascent desire for equality between the sexes, even in Milton's perception, Wollstonecraft now proceeds to illustrate how this can be achieved. How can women become equal to men? The emphasis now is going to be an acquirement of those attributes that can help women become equal to men. The first and most important step is, it's from my side, property right. You claim the property, you have the property. Okay. And if you don't have, buy the property. of individual education. Expanding the idea of Wollstonecraft says that individual education should begin in childhood and should aim at developing a sense, the temper, that understanding of the child's mind in such a way that when the body arrive at maturity, the mind too is ready to begin the important task of learning, thinking, and reasoning for herself. See, if for any human being, if the body is becoming mature, for example, age, 18 plus, then all of our minds are working. We are reasonably enough. So need not to focus on women that they would be always aligning with the male of their society. Making a distinction between individual education and private education, Wollstonecraft argues that the latter, man and woman say, ought to be educated in the great degree by the opinion and manners of society they live in. Yet, given the present social structure, she agrees that much cannot be expected from such education until such time as society is restricted without it prejudices. Even so, every individual begin as the capability of becoming virtuous by exercising his or her reason, whatever be circumstances. Most perfect education. In Wollstonecraft's opinion, then the most perfect form of education for both the sexes is one that strengthens the body and form the heart by an exercise of understanding. In other words, good education should enable man and woman to become independent. In fact, she says all such men and women who call themselves virtuous are being false and untrue if their virtue doesn't result for an exercise of their own reason. Referring to Rousseau, once again, Wollstonecraft point out that he has said the same thing but only with regard to men. She extends his argument to women too and urges them to try. And refinement are not virtue. Yet Wollstonecraft realizes that the homage of these fake possessions bring them into intoxicating. But she labels the degrading and it call as a curse and explore women to return to nature and equality. This, however, is not possible till the manner of the time and change, and thus can entail a long wait, probably till such time as kings and nobles to exercise the reason, throw off the hereditary trappings of the power, aim for the real dignity of man. When this happens, women too will be required to throw off the outward trappings of their arbitrary power of beauty. If they fail to do so, then they will prove themselves to be intellectually inferior to men. The deception of women by male writers. Wollstonecraft moves on next to critique those writers who have written on the subject of female education and manner and have contributed to making them men more artificial and weak than they would otherwise have been perceived. From the Rousseau to Dr. Gregory, all these writers, she says, that made women out to be almost useless member of the society. Rousseau's Emily and John Gray's A Father's Legend Legacy to His Daughters. Both these works from the butt of her criticism at this point. She points out that she has a quarrel with particular passages in these works, but her objection extends to the whole purpose of these books, which render women pleasing at the expense of every solid virtue. The ultimate result is a degradation of one half of the human species. Wollstonecraft find it difficult to accept Rousseau's argument where he says that once a man attains physical and mental maturity, then it is enough for his mate to rely on his understanding. The image of the great, graceful, the oak would be perfect image of the strength and beauty becoming one whole. Wollstonecraft quarrels, however, stem from the fact that most often man as well as women are only overgrown children. According to her, According to her, their bodies may have attained maturity, but their minds need not have arrived at the same status. If neither is mentally mature, it would be a case of blind leading the blind, and one can easily imagine the consequence. One blind is leading, you know, following the other blind. So, what contributions to the enslavement of the woman? What are the reasons? Wollstonecraft now begin a list and explain some of the causes that enslave women by comparing them, their understanding and shaping their sense. The uppermost cause that more mischief than other is disregarded of the order. Explaining how this happens, Wollstonecraft talks about the upbringing of women, which does not prepare them to approach life in an ordinary manner. According to her, it is their education that which is to be blamed her because there is no method in it. Their understanding and reasoning remain limited and unformed due to incorrect education. Consequently, they can reason out things and rely only on a kind of instinctive common sense. They become slaves of the habit, doing today what they did yesterday merely because they did it yesterday, and thinking mechanical process. Wollstonecraft expands the idea further and points out that the little knowledge that women do acquire in form observation of the various circumstances rather than any discipline training, which is a most must for anybody. For women's cultivation of the understanding takes a back seat and acquire of the refinement of the manner in which a favor or morals. Man, on the other hand, are from their infancy broken into methods and observe and attend to things which a degree of exactness. So, character determined by education and not sex. So, you know what? How your character, how your learning, how your perception, how you as a human being, it matters as a human being, not as a sex. Okay? If you are a man or a woman, or if you are, you believe in the fluidity of sexes, that's all depend on you. This learning, your experience, making opinion, and thinking rationally, it doesn't have anything to do with the sex. So character determined by education and not sex. Wollstonecraft now moves on to illustrate at some length the fact that person's character is formed by education he or she received and is not determined by the sex of the person. If imperfect education is imparted to people, then irrespective of their sex, it has to same damaging effect on their character. In this context, she compared the conduct of a man in the army with that of the women and locate a number of similarities between the two. The reason for this lies against in the half cooked education and then the soldiers receive before they are pushed into the world, in the world of the war. Their minds are yet unformed, and whatever they learn, they do so from observation. For socializing with people, so in their behavior too, we find an excessive emphasis on the observation of manner and custom. Their understanding is limited in this sphere, and unthinking they follow the rules of decorum. Having developed for the knowledge, and that has never been tasted by the reason or judgment. Moreover, it is a limited awareness that should be confused with the knowledge of the human heart. Because of their deficient education, we find them to uh, the man to an excessive emphasis on manners rather than morals. It goes without saying that it is imperfect education and not the sex of the person that determines their level of intelligence and understanding. With regard to the women, the argument can carry still further. Wollstonecraft referred to these men now who will profess to be slaves of their mistress, tyrannize over their sisters, wives, and daughters at the same time. If the female mind is strengthened, there will be an end to blind obedience. Very ingeniously, the tyranny and the sensualist endeavor to keep women in dark because they both have power over them. Even when being a sensualist who seemingly wallows under the cruel gaze of his mistress, it would hold sway over the woman, though she may be mistakenly thinking that it is who wields the stick. This is how many women have been duped by their lovers who also princes by their mistress. Wollstonecraft convincingly proved that real power lies with the one who has knowledge. Okay, so in this way, in the little fragments system I'm reading, and I'll be live again because while you're reading, you feel tired also. The throat need little rest. So we'll meet again. Thank you so much for watching.